second. Cover me for a second.
No problem. If you've just joined us, folks out there, we are now talking with my guest, Mike Beers, who is a UFO and Bigfoot producer of documentary films, and he is now recounting to us some of the interesting sighting reports that he's experienced that kind of got him into these two subjects. So I think at this point he's going to recount a little bit about how he got real seriously into squatching as well.
Okay, I'm back. I took a drink and tried to drown myself there. Sorry about that. So as the years went by, I've been having some experiences. I've been around the Mount Adams area here in Washington as of today, for 27, 28 years now. I've been doing stuff around there. So as a hunter, camper, and backcountry hiker, I have had a lot of experiences, and until 2012, I really didn't realize how many of those experiences were attributed to Bigfoot. Now, I've heard knocks and whoops at night and strange, like, rock clacks going on, and, well, I've been being the only one in camp at that point going, what is that, guys? You hear that? And wanting to know what it was. Others in camp never had an interest, didn't care, and got tired of me talking about it. So, when internet came along, then I started picking up even more information and found out, wow, there's groups like this of people that are interested in these things. And also, several books had come out as I was growing up, great books. And so I had access to some stuff, but it really, really picked up when the internet started. So I started following some of the more famous people. Then I got out and started becoming really serious about being out in the brush, and had some amazing things happen. And that exponentially changed things for me. As of today, I've had 8 full body sightings, and I don't count the tree peekers or what I think is a head popping up over brush or a hand or something like that. I only count one if I see a full body ambulating, not just standing still but moving. So 8, and I saw my 8th one in Grants Pass, Oregon, and that was on a trip I was with Gunnar Munson, and he looked the wrong way when I pointed at it. He looked the wrong way, and it ducked back in the brush, but it was right out in the open, and that was a young one. But so a total of 8 at this point, and it's all, I feel real blessed. If I never see another one, I've been truly blessed.
Well, Mike, let me stop you before you get any further here. You say that you've had these full-body sightings of Bigfoot, but you don't count the tree peekers? That's a fascinating situation.
No, don't count the tree peekers, because if I'm going to put my name on it, I want to make sure that what I'm seeing is, in fact, a Bigfoot creature. It is, in fact, one of the forest dwellers. I am not going to count anything that is just peeking out and I see part of the head or a hand and shoulder, because I'm really, at that point, I can't see the rest of it. It may be my mind playing tricks on me, my eyes playing tricks on me, in the lighting in the forest. But when there's one standing there and walking towards you, or coming into your camp, that's a whole nother story. So I decided early on that if I was going to put my name on things and say that I've seen this many, that I was only going to count the ones I was absolutely hands down positive, 100% positive, that is what I saw. And by the way, every one of them that I saw, I had witnesses, I had other people with me, so they got to experience this as well. Like I said, the 8th one, Gunnar looked the wrong way. I pointed to the right. I said, hey, you want to see a Sasquatch? And I pointed to the right, and it was, 15, 20 foot from me. And he looked to the left. And I said, no, not there, over here. And as I looked back towards it, it was stepping back into the trees. So
he
missed out. But I know you're going to want to hear about those sightings, so go ahead and ask me.
Matter of fact, let me get into some of the details from your recollection of either one or two, or just the general appearance of these full-body Bigfoot sightings that you've had. This would be, because you seem to have some of the more detailed observational abilities, and I would love to be able to get any kind of information that you have about what you saw.
Well, I am one of those, and I'm one of those that will walk right up and introduce myself, and there's others out there that will walk up to them. So I'm not the only one. But I walk up and introduce myself. Now, I had some out of Morton. You heard Vince talk about some anomalous stuff going on in Morton area here in Washington. I was with a BFL investigator out of Oregon, and him and I were in this camp. It was pouring down rain. It was in the fall, and the hill around this quarry, the rim of this quarry was backlit by the lights from the town of Morton. And we were just standing there in the pouring rain outside of our shelter, and I noticed that there was some movement on the rim, and it was fairly close to us. It was only 15 yards from us. And so the movement was just subtle movement. And then I noticed to the right there was another shape that matched the shape on the left. And I said to this other guy, I said, those weren't there earlier. And he said, no, they weren't. And I said, he says, let me try something. And he kind of started swaying back and forth. This is great. He started swaying back and forth. So the shape on our left, you could see its arm outstretched. It had a hold of an alder tree. It let go of the tree and started swaying back and forth. The one on the right made a couple of steps towards the one on the left, and you could see the arm swing, and it appeared to smack the smaller one. And then it sounded like birds talking to each other. Just weird. And we were like floored. Did you see that? And so we didn't light him up with a flashlight. I said to him at this point, did you put fresh batteries in the audio recorder? And he says no. Now the audio recorder was sitting in a cluster of stumps on the rim of the quarry. So he goes over there, and he actually turned on his white headlamp, which we don't usually do. We use the red light. And he's bent over, and he's messing with this. He's getting fresh batteries out and putting them in there. And at that point, with his movement, I actually could see the two bodies. I could actually see details, limbs, shapes, contours of the bodies. Then the larger of the two started coming down the hill towards him. Now this other guy that was with me, he's a tank of a guy. He's just this big, tall guy, big, broad-shouldered guy. But so as he's moving around, the light keeps going on to it and off of it again. And I'm not going to light him up. I wouldn't light him up with a flashlight. I just wouldn't do that.
Interesting.
So at that point,
let me just make sure that I understand what you mentioned about this swaying back and forth. Did your friend have some kind of knowledge or information that swaying back and forth was trying to elicit a response from the Bigfoot? Is that what he was trying to do?
No, he didn't have any idea whether that would work or not. He just said he wanted to try something, and that's what he tried, and it worked. It got a response. And the interesting part of those two is they interacted with us from 9:30 to 2:30 in the morning when we both went to bed. He went and got in his tent. Yeah, he went and got in his tent, and then I got into my truck, and I had set up my bedding on the opposite side of where they were. So I got in my truck, and I moved everything in the bed of my truck over to that side so I could look out the window. And I laid there and watched them come into camp. Well, I should tell you more. There's more about. Let's back up. So at that point, because it gets better than that. So at that point, he's still messing with the audio recorder, And I told him, I said, you've got one on your left. There's one coming down on the hill on your left. And he says, okay, I'm almost done. And I said, man, you've got one right on your left. And as he stood up, he illuminated the whole thing. So you could see the leg muscles and butt muscle and back muscle working, and his armpit, the back of his head, the neck area. As it spun, when he stood up, it spun around and started back up the hill. So it was just within, 15, 20 foot of him. And he saw it all illuminated and turned around and was like, oh, God, oh, God, oh, God. I didn't expect that. I said, I told you there was one right on your left. He goes, but I didn't expect that. And so he was a little freaked out at that point. So they continued to walk back and forth on the rim there, and then came down at one point and cut across the drive, the opening into this quarry. And as the two of them passed the opening, one of them went down on all fours just for a second and then did this weird, hop thing where it hiked its butt up in the air and kind of bounced its rear end up and over, and then it stood up again and joined the other one in a walk. And then they went off into the brush, and it was shortly after that they were coming back out across the opening, heading back to where they originally were. And then that's when I said, I'm going to go introduce myself. And he begged me not to do it. I told you he was a big guy, but he was kind of afraid of cats. So he begged me not to do it. I said, I'm going to go introduce myself. It's the right thing to do. And so as I started to walk away, he started begging me, please don't. I don't want anything to happen to you. If something happens to you, I'm by myself. So I turned back around and kind of laughed at him a little bit, and then thought, well, he's freaked out, so I'm not going to tease him about it. But so we stood back in there. Now at this point, they were still on the rim of the quarry, and I started looking around, and there was a larger one, an adult, on the little side road that went around up to the top of the quarry. It was very narrow. It was the original road where like a dozer went up there or something. It was overgrown. And it was squatted down on all fours, and when we turned around, it was squatted down on it was like squatted and it wasn't on all fours, but it had its forearms on its knees, so it had its butt kind of down and, just squatted down. And it was just looking at us. And then it stood up at that point, stood there for a second, and then walked up to the top of the quarry behind the trees and out of sight. It wasn't long after that, still watching the two, that it was time for, he said it was time for, the other guy said it was time for a potty break. So I said, yeah, I'll do the same thing at the same time. We'll just get it over with so we can both watch. And at that point, while we're standing there taking care of our business, the adults stepped out of the trees down in the quarry with us. So he's standing in the opening right out in front of us, and I noticed how he shifted his weight from like we do. He shifted it over to like putting most of the weight on one foot. So he just kind of shifted over, and that was interesting. He kind of looked at us for a bit, and then he stepped back into the trees. Then after that, we didn't see him again. But the other two continued, the smaller ones, the younger ones, continued to go up and down the rim of the quarry there, and down the quarry wall close to us by where he had saw the one where he illuminated the one with his light. And then back up. And then at some point, one went across the road and was standing up on a rock. That was great. That was the key thing right there, because when he went over there, there was a lot of exposed dirt. So it wound up leaving tracks, so which we corrected the next day. We took photos and measurements, and we did about a whole series of photos for comparison and stuff the next day. So that was really a cool experience. Like I said, it went on to 2:30 in the morning that I know of. I kept falling asleep. I had been up for so long the day before. I barely had any sleep in the last couple of days, so I was getting angry with myself for falling asleep, and I tried to shake it off and watch them a little more. There was a meat pole in this hunter's camp, and they came down, and one of them was kind of holding on to that with one hand, and the other one was poking around in camp. So it went by the front of my truck, and it was kind of fogged up from my breathing in there, so I couldn't really see through the window there. I could only see where I had my windows open, and it got good circulation on the side they originally were on. So it came back. I don't know where it came from, but I